Hey everyone, welcome to another episode from Ampro Engineering. If you are the lover of a Bruiser or Trailfinder 2, original Tamiya Hilux, and so on, this is the episode for you. Because in this episode, we are going to cover this. What I have done here is created a panel that will affix itself to the inside of the standard Tamiya Bruiser interior and allow you to get a tremendous amount of detail out of it. In fact, it will even have the opportunity to illuminate the gauges, vent controls, and such. Now, in this episode, we're going to focus just on the pieces here that will affix themselves to the main interior. But in a future episode, we can talk about the shifter. This is an automatic shifter, but a manual is available. I went ahead and did an auto because I wanted to have the shift lights light up. And there's also a complete set of door panels. These are just the panels, but there are armrests, door pulls, window cranks, and so on. But again, we'll focus on those later. And for now, we're going to deal with this. So I'm going to try and do my best here to show you exactly what we have whipped up. And in no particular order, this is the steering column. Okay, the wheel, the standard wheel will affix itself to that right there. Actually, it'll go right here. You are going to have this piece here is the radio trim part. None of this will light up. You'll paint this black and then detail it. And it's all designed to have these little ridges so that you can very, very easily run a paint pen or brush directly over it and get you some details. That is the cigarette lighter. The vents, these are also attached to this main panel. This piece here is the trim piece, and it kind of runs all the way here and up around the dash. It's the main trim piece, so that's where your auxiliary gauges go. That's where the vent will pop into. This is the inside part of the dash panel. You'll paint this an opaque color. This is the inside part of the dash in front of the dash panel, which also will get painted an opaque color. This piece right here that we're looking at is the trim piece that usually is a metallic gray, or on the higher end Toyota pickups, a wood grain. This piece here, looking at the back side of it, this is the actual instrument cluster. And look, this is just nonsense. I can't believe who designed this. Look at all the details. It's ridiculous. Anyway, this is not intended to be opaque. I know in the Blackfoot build I did, I would say that paint this entire thing a opaque color and carefully sand off the high spots. Because of how this dash is illuminated, it's actually top lit. When the dash lights are on, the entire thing should light up. So what we're going to have to do is paint the entire thing, but not enough to make it opaque, if that makes sense. At least in my head it does. This piece here will also be painted and illuminated. So these here again will not make them opaque. These here we will try and make them as opaque as possible. This is the control for the radio. Actually, this is the front of the radio. Up here, this is the equalizer, and this is actually the cassette player. And those two dots there are, I think one of them is stereo, and one of them is cassette inserted or something of that nature. And these are the vent controls. And somewhere over, oh, it's right here. This part is also necessary. I don't know, what was I thinking here? Okay, so these little guys are the vent control knobs. They are round about 1 millimeter in size, so don't inhale when you're working with those. These little ball things are the vents. These little pieces here are the vent trim pieces. One of them will go into the dash. The other one will have to have a hole cut out for it. This is the dimmer switch. And one of these, I think this one here, is the wiper, and the bigger one, the fatter one, is the turn signal / headlight switch. Now, before we begin, this is basically a model kit. If you fancy yourself a high-level model maker, then this, I think, will be acceptable. If you think that building models of anything is tedious and painful, then please do not buy this, because this will be the most tedious and painful thing you've ever done. The first place we're going to start is trying to paint these. Now, what I need to tell you is that this thinner, high detail plastic from Shapeways is susceptible to intense heat. And by intense heat, I mean if you are living in an area where it's 100 degrees outside and you shoot these in a low gloss black, that can get a surface temperature of 140 to 150 degrees very easily, and it's very likely that you will warp these. So if it's hot outside, please paint these in the shade. I will start here by cutting some of these off the sprue. and we'll cut off the instrument cluster here. When you are trimming these, please do not blindly trim. If you notice here, there's a small rectangular boss right there. That is necessary for installation, but directly behind it, there is a round stud that can be trimmed right there. So please analyze everything prior to cutting these off blindly. Everything is off the sprue except for the little vent controls here. Those will be painted on the sprue for very obvious reasons. My plan here is to begin to paint these in batches. I know that I want these two illuminated pieces to be painted separately because I don't want to have them painted too much. This will be a dark red or maroon color to match the interior. This piece here, I think will be a low gloss black, whereas this will be charcoal, as well as these vent controls being charcoal. So just to show how I've taped everything down, and depending on which episode you're watching here, these are going to be all shown in different segments of this installation build. But basically this box here has everything that I want in burgundy. This has everything that I want to be in black. Here is everything that I want to keep transparent. And lastly, the items I'd like to keep in charcoal. So that's why I've got all these different boxes. All the different components have been painted. And now I'm going to do a little bit of detailing on this panel right here. I'll give it a wood grain look. And you can see that the panel has a number of recessed and embossed areas. And these areas are designed so that you can easily paint inside of them. And the bosses, of course, are so that you can do the chrome trim if you so choose. As you can see, I've done some very light detail work on these buttons. The right 3 radio buttons say FM on the original truck. The left 2 don't say anything. Those are for AM. Here you can see the wood grain. That looks just off, and it looks a little better. The reflection's not so good there. You can see a little chrome trim that I applied with the standard liquid chrome paint pen. And then we're going to take this and simply drop the dash onto it, and that should slot right in there, just like that. And the reason I'm doing this right now is because it's going to give additional rigidity to this dash panel, which is incredibly flimsy. So you can see the radio controls will pop in directly behind, and you want to use a good model glue to hold all this together, and absolutely not super glue, which will cause blooming, that white haziness, and pretty much ruin everything. The charcoal piece here for the vent bezel should just pop right in there. It is a square, pops right in. The little round cylinder to the left here is the dash intensity light that gets snapped off and placed in that hole right there. And one here is going to be the vent register. This little guy will go right in behind this, and just like the real truck, it can be positioned in any way that you want. This next part, we're going to install the instrument cluster trim panel into the instrument cluster bezel area. This is a very small and fragile part, so please be exceedingly careful. It'll just drop in like that, and I wouldn't bother putting any glue on it because the cluster itself will hold it in place. This next part is highly optional. Using a scrap piece of Lexan or a piece of clear plastic no greater than 0.5 millimeter stick, we're going to make an instrument cluster lens. Again, this is optional, especially if you're going to be using this in very dirty environments. You want to be able to just blow the cluster out, and this would prevent that. The area that we want to copy is this embossed area around the instrument cluster trim fascia, and we are going to do that by just dropping it straight on here, holding it in place as best you can. I wish I had a better way to do this, folks. I don't, unfortunately. And we'll take our X-Acto knife and simply score the perimeter, and it'll do a reasonably good job. You have some embossed features here that you're going to just have to go around. And please be careful putting a load on this plastic because it is very, very fragile. And that is about what we need. So I'll cut this out right now. All right, once that has been cut out, we can go ahead and just drop it into place like so. And then we'll take our trim panel here and we'll push that right on top. And at this point, we can apply a bit of adhesive in these areas here to hold this all together. And from the front, it'll look like that. And let's just take a gander at how it's going to look with the gauges installed. Oh, that's pretty slick. That's really cool. While I have some glue setting up, let's go ahead and get the instrument cluster ready. This can go a couple different directions depending on what you want to do to it. I would like to have it light up. So the black on this has not gone on very thick. It's gone on enough to make it look black, but a light shining behind it will actually pass through the black because I want to give it that top lit appearance that the original truck has. Because I want it lit up, I also want to sand down all the numbers. If you do not want it lit up, this is the time where you'll take possibly a needle and start to detail the instrumentation. I'm going to take some 1000 grit sandpaper and hold it as flat as I can and very lightly set that on top and just pass it. That's probably enough. Now it looks like it needs a little bit more. Cool, we're getting there. So I actually folded the sandpaper and I'm just kind of very gently going back and forth on the numbers here. Now there are a number of idiot lights on this dash, and if you do not want those lit up, for example, telling you that your truck has no oil pressure, maybe it'd be best not to sand those down. Okay, and there we have it. We'll take our colored Sharpies now and detail some of the things like the high beam indicator, maybe the seatbelt light, and a couple other things here. Referring to the 1980 brochure, as well as the truck in my garage, I know that all of these gauges are white except for the needle, which happens to be orange. And then for the auxiliary gauges, we'll do the same thing. As you can see, I've painted the backside of the illuminated parts silver. And the reason for this is simply to get some more reflection inside here. And now that they're painted silver, I'm going to paint them black to help with minimizing any kind of light bleed from around here. Next, I'll install the steering column and the wiper and turn signal stalks. Remember that the steering wheel we took off earlier is going to be able to be pushed in to this hole here, and it would be a good idea to test fit it because when it's installed you don't want to put too much of a load on this. Also, you might need to clean this out. This is some support material that I just dug out of the hole here, so please ensure that the opening is completely cleared out. This is nothing more than a residual from the 3D printing process, and if it's in here, the shaft for the steering wheel may not go all the way in. I'll just clip these stalks off of the sprue. We'll put a little dab of monoglue in this hole and this hole, and just note that that is the ignition tumbler, and on top this little black thing is the hazard light switch. This little one here with the completely rounded end is the windshield washer stock, and we'll just push that straight in there, and this one here with the little tab is the headlight switch. Okay, there we go, and we'll just let those dry. Remember that these stalks are very fragile, so please be careful. We'll take the steering column assembly and just push it through that hole, and we'll make sure that we're supporting it here on the rear side. We'll just put some glue on this as well. Step for the installation of the upgraded dash is to take this very rare and vintage Bruiser interior and destroy it. So we're going to cut this entire section here out, and to make the cut as accurate as possible, you'll be able to download these one-to-one drawing of the profile of what you need to cut. So take this and use an X-Acto knife and cut it all completely out. Obviously, you're going to have to cut the steering wheel off, but don't worry, we're going to use it later. And leave around 6 to 10 millimeters at the back of the steering wheel. And the remainder of the stock, I'm going to try and push out. My template's been cut out. Remember that the link for the template is going to be in the description of the video, as well as in the description on Shapeways. It's very important to make sure that what your printer is printing is in fact one-to-one. So oftentimes it's just helpful to print a ruler, make sure that there's no scaling, and then measure the ruler once it's been printed so that you can adjust it, because once you cut this out, you're kind of out of luck. This is going to seat itself right in here so that you've got roughly a 1 millimeter perimeter around this edge here, around this edge here, and it kind of wrapping its way around. What you want to do is just go ahead and cut small because you can always enlarge it later. I'm going to use this double-sided tape, apply it on this face, and then press this down on top of it. This was exceptionally messy, What you don't see is all the shavings on my face, but I had some goggles on, so my eyes are at least fine. I'm going to take an X-Acto knife. I'll show you where I screwed something up royally. This area down here, we need to do some more polishing, but I think overall it's about the right size. But you can see what happened here. The barrel of the Dremel tool nicked that as I was trying to cut this over here. So please make sure that you're careful not to get the end of the Dremel too close to this. And also when you're cutting the top, remember that this angles downward. So you have to take the Dremel and angle your bit in the event you're using one of these cutoff wheels so that the angles match up like that. Once we've got the main cutout roughed in, we can kind of try and place this and see how close we are. So the gauges seem to want to drop in at the bottom, the auxiliary gauges. The rest of it seems to need a little more clearance. So now with my X-Acto knife or maybe with a file, you can go ahead and clean up these edges. And again, do this little by little and be careful with these sharp knives. It took a little work to get some of this inner wall thickness down. When I used the calipers on this wall was almost 3 millimeters thick, and this dash insert is designed for a 1.5 millimeter wall thickness, which is what everything else is, give or take. So I did have to dig this down a bit, otherwise we're gonna compromise the actual cosmetic appearance of the new dash panel. For the vent, and I'm just gonna put it right here in the center, and that'll be pretty darn close. The overall square size of that vent is 6.75 by 6.75. So I'm gonna go just about there and just very carefully with my X-Acto knife, just square this hole out. All right, that hole is just about 7 by 7. I think it's gonna be okay because I tried to keep the corners rounded. We'll be back in another episode to put the hole in here for the shifter though. Well, as you can see, there's not much left. We've got the entire instrument cluster put together. We have to put in the auxiliary gauges, the main gauges, and the vent. And I went ahead and put in the vent trim here, and then we'll put the ball in from the back side like this and align it wherever you want it facing over here. You see it does move around. First though, we'll put in the main cluster, and hopefully you test fit this before. I certainly did, not, or did, I don't know, depends, I forgot now, I think I did. All right, and that basically goes like this. I feel like it's gotta go a little bit more in right there, but that's it. Okay. There we have it. And next, we're going to use a little bit of, again, model glue to hold this in place. I went ahead and just did a very light bead of hot glue because that allowed me to push this panel into place. There was some flex, and it held the panel in place while the model glue dried. And I did that as well for the vent here on the outside. The last bit is installing the illumination pieces. And again, you don't have to make them illuminated. That is optional. And we'll just drop those straight into place. Same with the gauges. Those are going to pop right in on top, like so, theoretically. So those are all in. And we'll do a little dab of hot glue to keep these in place too. And the reason I'm doing this is I don't want any glue to seep in and ruin all the work that I've done. All right, so that is all held in place. And there we have it. That is the complete dash installed, and I have to admit, I'm very happy. Oh, wait. We haven't installed these. I was painting, by the way. That's what's happening. I'm not actually going goth. I was painting. So we need to put these on. Let's deal with that. All right, so we're going to snip these off using some flush cutters and leave really hard to see. As you can see from here, there's a tiny little peg that sticks out lower than the sprue post. Cut it off at that peg as low as you can, and then you're going to use some tweezers to very carefully install them in the, if you can see right there, the blower control. I believe the top one is the vent selection. The middle one, I think, is temp selection. Beneath that is inside and outside air, and that one on the bottom right is air conditioning. I'm going to very carefully install these now. Okay, there's no way possible that I could have filmed myself putting these on, but you can see a little vent controls like that. Currently it's set to AC, recirculation, cool, and bi-level vents with the blower on 3/4. If that's not anal, I don't know what is. To install these, they were nearly impossible to slot into the location where they belong. They were a pain to hold the tweezers and a pain to glue. So I don't know who designed this, but they were terrible. Anyway, that is all we're going to show for now, because in the next episode, we'll show it with the door panels put on, the shifter installed, and the lights working. So remember, link to all of the information to purchase these is in the description. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I can't wait to put this in my Bruiser.